this is the official intro.
Here's a handshake.
Right,
Hello.
right. Yes, yes, yes. So good morning. Helen Lessick is here. She's an artist, an art activist, and a thinker whose artworks include sculpture, installation, books, and performance. And she investigates the invisible and unseen. So hopefully in today's conversation, we'll get a little, clarity on your process. And we're going to focus on Montaigne's, am I saying that right? Montaigne's Tower and the Utility of Plague. And I would love for you to, if you want to do a brief intro to the project.
All right. Hello, Avital. It is an honor to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to be part of this series. My name is Helen Lessick. I am an artist and civic activist working in Los Angeles and across the country. My process, well, I've been working for 40 years. I have multiple degrees in art. To me, I have always been interested in how artists use the physical manifestations of the world to create new views of experience. And that's one of the things that attracted me to your work, especially the chapbook you did with Jesse Brooks. You really look at the world, but then you capture these moments of the leaf falling or the bird looking curious at a bird sculpture. So I think that's really that's where I'd like to start. The project that I'm working on now that I sent you is called Montaigne's Tower, or the Utility of Plague. Now, I have a couple of images here, and I can share a PowerPoint if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. Right. Oh my God, you have come prepared. Yes,
I have. I talk a lot about work, not necessarily mine.
It's almost as if you've done this before.
I have done something like it, but never this, my friend. I have never done this.
Nice.
Speaking with you about what we're doing, I think, is an important part of the practice.
But I do feel like there is this mystique around the process, and it's almost as if we're not supposed to talk about it.
Yeah.
You're just supposed to show up at the gallery or at the museum or at wherever the exhibit is taking place and just sit in awe of the wonderment of the finished product. And I think that our dissociation from the process makes a lot of people that want to be artists not understand what it actually entails.
What I find is that the important thing is that, well, for me, art is conversation. And it's a conversation with other artists, with my materials and content. For me, the invisible and unseen, which are two different things, but also with the audience. One of the facets that I work in is public art and installation outside of the commercial gallery process. And that, to me, that's very important because it addresses an audience of thinkers and lookers. We're all thinkers. We just assume that you are limited to your wallet, and so therefore only value the wallet. So with that, I will share my screen. Okay. Now you can see my fantastic work, which I also put in this wonderful color. Now I'm going to do a view. So I have about a quick slideshow. So Miguel de Montaigne was a French middle-class homeowner who served as a functionary in government in France, in the 1500s. He was a young man, but of some wealth, and he was a jurat. And a jurat is kind of like an alderman. He had some function. It was appointed by royalty, and he helped the city move in his own small way. When the Black Plague came through France in the 1500s, he was just at the end of a term. There was supposed to be a royal ceremony to change the guard to the next man who was going to do this. And he wrote to the powers that be and said, should we have a ceremony? Really, it will just put people at risk. So I think that we should just stop this now. And he decided not to come into the city and moved to his tower to write about what he knew best himself. This is the project that's in my studio now. It's an installation with paint, wood, paper mache, and upholstery. There is essentially, if I can go through this, here's a closer detail. There's a window that's off the camera frame here. And then you'll see on the wall, which is a very loosely wet painted roller application, there's a memory of this tower, and then the paper mache tower itself, and then the didactic material on the wall. This is what it says on the wall, and it's intentionally fuzzy because it's a historical document. The bubonic plague entered Bordeaux, and what Montaigne decided to do is withdraw from the city and take to writing about essays, which are his trial. And he wrote in French, of course. He invented the essay art form by sitting in this tower and just writing every day. And this is what brought us with Susan Sontag's fantastic essays, with essays looking at everyday life, from salt to flowers to food. Michael Pollan, this man invented it by the nature of an impact of reflection. And so that's what I'm looking at and responding to the current plague that has been affecting us in the globe for 3 years. Here's a detail of the work. So in using paper, not only did I create this memory kind of periwinkle gray, but the shelf holds a paper mache tower, which reflects Montaigne's tower. And the paper mache is from the index of a paperback book in French of Montaigne's essays that reflects about everyone he cited in his work. Because the idea here is that artists are not originalists. We respond to the conversation. Montaigne responded to his friends. He also responded to the Latin scholars, and especially the non-religious scholars that were taught, and especially Plutarch. So you see a lot of Plutarch in here. The work is really a meditation on what we can do with the time that we have, knowing that what we have is temporary, ephemeral, can always be impacted by death and loss, but also beauty and the wonder of impermanence. So with that, questions?
Yeah. Oh, several at least. Well,
Okay.
I want to respond to something that you said, which is that artists aren't originalists. I love that so much to hear, first of all. And second of all, it reminds me of many conversations I've had with potential artists who are really concerned about not being original, and allow that to sort of stop them from pursuing whatever it is that they're interested in. So this statement that you just said is completely revolutionary. And I love hearing it. And it's almost as if what you're saying, you don't have any excuses to not create work. Just because it looks like something or it sounds like something, if you want to make the work, just do it. And I love the idea of artists and conversations, because I feel like this is why me personally have entered this world. Because exactly this type of dialogue where it's like, what is everybody working on and why? Yeah. Now, of course, clearly the COVID connection to the bubonic plague is clear. And I love that it was one of those moments where it's like a voice of reason. You're like, should we really have this large gathering when we're all biological weapons, essentially? So I love that. I wonder, we're going to take it back, which is like, how generally and specifically for this one, how do you decide on starting a project?
Well, well, this was, oh, I don't know. I don't
I
know.
love that.
It just comes to me. I have dreams, I have visions. I look at something and go, for that particular, well, I will say that artists are not originalists, but we pay attention to what we feel and see and need to express. So I think the expressionist part is probably key to a lot of people stopping their work. You might not feel you need to create something if you see a fantastic jaw-dropping work of art. You might not need to paint portraiture if you can just whip out your phone and take a photo. And that, I think that reliance on technology or tools as opposed to the inner conversation is something that stops a lot of people. They think, it's today's 21st century version of my kid could have done that for abstract expressionism. Well, it's not true. And if they could encourage them, because that's a wonderful thing to have, that conversation. And again, it could be, for me, that conversation with Montaigne's Tower is really about looking at the use of time. And now we have time in front of us, and the COVID-19 has really stopped us from using our time in distracted and, overly social ways. And we're thrown back on ourselves. So what do we do with that time? It's an interesting question. There isn't a right answer. It's you have this time. For me, and that project in particular, I do a lot of reading. Most of my reading is the science, the history of science, natural history, but that also includes the human animal in context. So I've always loved Montaigne. Montaigne was a man of his time. It was sexist and clearly privileged in economic terms, but he also looked at himself and his own foibles, his fat little belly he writes about, and his hair thinning in a way that a lot of people, that many European males would not, or many men anywhere would not, or women. So I went back to that and had the opportunity to get an old paperback in French. And I had a really old paperback from 40 years ago. And I've been carrying around this paperback. It was I'm spending a lot of time at home. I'm cleaning up and thinking I should get rid of this, but never get to its material. So I decided that, I don't like the idea of destroying books, but this book was falling apart. So I decided to take the contents of the book and make it into something else. So it started with the tower. And how do we put those words on a form that isn't just the book part? I know it isn't that perfect bound format that we're so used to, or scrolled on a screen. How do you make that an experience? And I wanted to think about Montaigne's internal life. He would get up, have breakfast brought to him, the fire started, and then he went to the tower. He wasn't looking to sell it or to have a big gallery opening. He was trying to understand the world. And I think that's for me, it just went from there. It went from there.
Yeah, no, the vibe is, and of course, I haven't seen it in person. I've seen it much like you just presented this wonderful slideshow. The vibe is it's both austere as well as introspective, like a monk's nook.
Yeah.
And I can completely relate to it. When COVID started and the lockdown started, I should say, I felt like I was experiencing, I don't have a studio, but I have my home and I have a room that's dedicated to my work. And I felt like I was in
Isn't that a studio? Excusez-moi.
Well, thank you for saying that. All right. Yes. So I have a home studio. Beautiful.
Okay, fine. Excellent.
I have to remember that, because it's like, just because it's supposed to be a bedroom, a room is a room, walls are walls. Yep. I love it. Thank you. So I felt like all of us artists or potential artists have been relinquished to a forced residency
Yeah.
of sorts, where we cannot socialize, we cannot distract ourselves with the nonsense of other people, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do in this time? And looking at your piece, it's more of a feeling for me. The feeling is automatically communicated there. And part of me wonders, like, are you opening up the space for people to come in, or is this just a digital representation?
Well, there's a couple of things to respond to, of course. It's an installation. It's an installation. It is looking for an exhibition space, a more commercial space. I have a home studio. I also have a studio in a building outside of my home. So I'm fortunate. And after years, it's a wonderful luxury to have. And I'm making a new nest. The great thing about having a studio outside the home is there's a new place to nest, to get your thoughts, and you spend time there. And you're not distracted by tea or cleaning or the bathroom sink. It's just really a different way of working. So when we can, the studio will be part of an open, my project, which is actually in a hallway, will be part of this open studio exhibit. But I'd say that what I think about your work, if it's appropriate to talk about your work, sure. I look at your LA River film. And I think you're doing a very similar thing, not exactly the same, but you are looking at the shared physical space. You are looking at your hallway, which is the LA River, and considering these different aspects of it. In these poetic moments that are ripples in a stream, choose your metaphor. So I think you're already doing it. It's a matter of finding the confidence and the audience to really be able to see and share your work. And I'd say that's one of the, if we can get political for a minute, for the next 200 years, capitalism has put artists into a gallery mode, as has graduate programs. There is this pyramid scheme of educating people for these, and it's a good scheme. I went to graduate school and I had a good time. I learned a lot, but it affected my social network more than my creative work.
I hear that often from fellow artists. It's like, asked why you pursued an MFA. Oftentimes it's to get connected to galleries, get connected to curators. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's not bad. That's what I was. So both my undergrad and grad program were, I worked in the galleries and I worked with curators, but they were academic galleries. So they were not commercial galleries. They were, and I think academic galleries, institutions, museums, and public art programs, which is my other favorite activity, really help artists navigate the real commercial and fiscal impact of art making and spending the time making art without having to sell small trinkets to the middle class.
Yes, yeah. I roll my eyes.
The camera caught that.
Yes. I forgot for a second I'm being recorded. Thank you.
And I hope we share this in a gallery one day soon.
Yes, precisely. And, because you got to be realistic as well. The materials to create the tower, the plush seat, that looks very comfortable. I don't know if you can actually sit on it.
You can.
All of those things cost money. And so, herein lies the conundrum for sure. The constant push and pull between aesthetics for the sake of selling and, wanting to have these exact conversations where nothing costs any money and we're just exchanging ideas. And I feel like for me personally, the commercial gallery experience has been kind of a bummer, honestly. I feel like there's a flatness, and perhaps it's sort of the way that I've approached it. But I do feel like entering that space is it's not a grand experience for me. You really do feel the commerce in the air, and you then are applying this layer to your work that, frankly should have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But it does. So it's like real and imagine, or real and inspired sort of at the same time. I was going to ask about specifically, well, first of all, I do want to say that thank you for pointing out that there's a window, because I was wondering about the light source.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you play around with that a lot to figure
I
out?
did that. Well, I have to say that window sitting in that space at that time of day, it's like, oh, it's beautiful the way the shadows move. It's like, oh, I should do something there. I mean, that's a really nice hallway. Who thinks about that?
Oh, I love artists.
Artists.
Exactly.
Exactly. Whether it's a poet or a musician, there's good acoustics there too. And artists will come in and do something that you wouldn't expect in the space. So yeah, the lighting is ephemeral. So, later in the afternoon or in the evening, it has a magic glow, but not like that. And that's the nature of the sun.
Do you have, and therefore commenting on time immediately, and I wonder, do you have the capacity, or do you care to do maybe a time-lapse video of the sun moving?
Oh, yeah, no, I have the capacity. I should do it. I really got the studio because I was exploring this other broom project, the motorized brooms, which look fantastic. Yeah. I'm very happy with, and I'm trying to set up the lighting in there. That hallway piece was a distraction from the piece that I really, it's like, what?
That's the real answer. How do you come up with projects? Distraction from other projects.
Yeah,
yes.
And it's true. It's true of recipes or films or interviews. It's like that. Just stuff happens. That's the nature of life.
Yeah, because as you were talking, I was like, oh, I would love to see it. I would love to see how the sun and therefore time affects especially the back wall.
Yeah,
because there is like a texture.
Yeah,
on it. And to go back a little bit, were you saying that the tower appears on the wall as well?
There's a silhouette of the tower, and it's the first thing I painted on the wall. And the wall is it's concrete block. It's an old beacon storage building. So, it's cast in place concrete. It was not made to be finished. It does not have sheetrock on it. And to hang anything on there, you have to, pneumatic drill with incredible bolts. So what I wanted to do, I saw the tower. I mean, would walk out my door, it's down the hallway. And I just thought there's something that I can put in there. And it was this Montaigne's tower. For me, it was the idea of the studio building that I was in and the isolation that the isolation that we've oddly shared.
Right. Oh, I love that.
I mean, so there is a silhouette of the actual size tower that I put on the wall. And my original idea was to have it at like waist height. So it was more like a pedestal piece, and then have the dimensional, the paper mache sculpture in front of it. And the more I did that and played with it and watched that light, the piece changed. It responded to what the light and the information told me. But with that scene, I'll tell you, I have to add that there are other artists in the building. It's like a 4 or 5 story building. There are artists who come down, sit on it, and take phone calls. They're using it as a lounge. That's a compliment.
Like I said, it looks very comfortable. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And
it is. No, and there's a dreamlike quality to it. That's absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, is it like a kind of a periwinkle blue? I mean, it's so calming.
Yeah, yeah, it's a color that I've done a couple of watercolors. I did a test. I designed part of my public art installation process. I figure out what I want to do, and then the material tells me what I can do.
I was going to ask about that because the plush,
Yeah, the
velvet of the
upholstery.
chair.
Yeah,
Did you go and like look through various fabrics before you settled on
I
that? Did you have it?
I did. No, I did. And I got two different, I got a matchy color, that brocade, and then I got an opposite, which is an orange.
Mm.
Because I was looking at the shelf as well that it sits on.
Did you
So yeah,
fabricate?
and I hand upholstered it. Like, what?
Wow. So that's
Seemed
a new
like
skill that you could do. You can
yeah.
upholster now. And that's another thing about artists that I think is so wonderful, very similar to actors, where we perform these new skills to go along with whatever artwork or project we're creating,
Mhm.
where it's like if we kind of wanted to go the upholstering route, or if you wanted to start doing that, you could actually start doing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, it really is a sort of fake it till you make it kind of a thing. But ultimately, really what it boils down to is just the necessity of bringing it to fruition.
Yeah.
So you have it in your mind in some kind of blurred vision, and then now you are sitting in front of me and whoever watches this and have shown us the fruits of the labor. And I, I just love this so very much. The fact that, this came from your mind and then here it is in real life, and people can sit on it and completely ignore the introspectiveness of it and just be on social media scrolling through while they're sitting on this very comfortable seat.
Yeah. But it's low, so it's a little, it's women who sit on it. I haven't seen a man sit on it yet.
Yeah. So it's a certain size.
Certain
Yeah.
size person. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
also something about, you keep referring to the hallway, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to discuss in script writing and storytelling, the narrowness of
Mhm.
a scene usually coincides with like a very emotionally heightened part. So it's like, this is where the good guy and the bad guy come together, and there's very little room
Yeah.
to wiggle around. And so I do wonder, for Montaigne as well as yourself, if putting it in the hallway, oops, sorry about that,
Yeah.
if putting it in the hallway is a way to kind of come into a very small space where you have to contend with yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. My previous, I've worked 40 years. Previous works have included a house shape. So a really simple, like child's drawing house, and you can see them on my website. They are a single door. Some of I've made them out of hay, out of trees, out of wooden screening. But the idea is you go into a room and you are the largest thing in that room. And if someone comes in after you, it's definitely a they can, but it's a face-to-face kind of meeting. And that notion of that journey, and confrontation is too strong. That encounter is certainly part of what you have to consider. You have to turn around. And you look back at where you came, and it's different from how you came in. And so I
Right.
think that, the process, the journey, whether you're a filmmaker, a script writer, a songwriter, or visual artist, that journey through the work is, in painting as well. There's a design, and your eye starts at one point and then it goes around. It moves with the design of the painting. With graphic artist, you're turning pages, and artist books, you turn pages and you're taking yourself on a journey. Well, it's the same with this hallway piece. Would it work in a flat gallery on a flat wall? I'd probably build some partitions around it, or have something that creates more of a journey-like feel, or scale it differently.
Where you can walk in and then walk
Walk in,
out.
yeah, because the idea is you approach this thing and you're slowing down. You're actually, that seat and that low shelf really make you smaller. And in becoming smaller, we mostly become more quiet.
And more paying attention to details, which is really like my work is very much very detail oriented.
Yeah.
So I love that. Fully attracted to anything that forces anybody to look down.
Yeah.
We don't do that a lot at all.
Yeah.
I did want to conclude, take it off track a little bit. I wanted to ask you that I saw that you've got an upcoming residency in New South Wales, Australia. How utterly exciting. Do you have any ideas of what you'll be working on during your stay, or is it just like...
No, I applied for the residency and was accepted. A recent installation was called The Burning Forest, and it was about the Western wildfires. A lot of my work with the invisible and unseen is about soil and what happens underground. The wildfires that were across the US and Mexico and Canada really impacted the western third of our country. This at the same time, it was happening in Australia. That was 2018, 2019. I planned this installation, did this project, exhibited it in Seattle, and then I applied to this residency. They said yes, then COVID hit. So my idea was to examine how the soils recover from high intensity fires. And it's not the same thing as the the indigenous peoples burning the prairies for the new grass. High intensity fires really damage the soil, especially in forests where the creosote comes down from our western pines, and particulate is just, it really damages the earth. And then we let people go in and log it and blah, blah, blah. The residency is looking at the soils. I've never been to New South Wales. It's in the Blue Mountains, this residency right outside of, an hour outside of Sydney. So I will see where it takes me. I have a huge studio. I'm interested in roots and regrowing. So what comes up after a fire? Now, since it's been 3 years now, the residency has been delayed and rescheduled. But unless we have a World War III or a return of monkeypox, I will be there for a 6-week residency.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That sounds utterly fascinating. And I am excited to see what does grow, because I do feel like there must be some minerals that are going to provide a regrowth of something, and who knows what that is. And you will return back from the field and let us know. And I very much look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. So I'll just say, I spent many years, many decades up in the Northwest, after the fires there, or after the eruption of Mount St. Helens, something called fireweed comes back. But that's with it comes up, and it's because all of the canopy is kind of fallen away and there's sunlight coming down to the soil. Maybe a metaphor for artists and our next generation of artists.
Yes.
I don't know. Is there something here that we can conclude on?
Exactly. So yeah, perfect segue. Ooh, I thank you so much for your time, sharing your work with me and the process.
Yeah.
I look forward to having chats with you in the future, and I really appreciate your time. If you want to take us out on something, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I would just like to thank you, Avatar, and the audience who might watch this at whatever time. I'd say the thing about an artist and a process is commitment to see it through. Don't stop because it seems silly. Don't stop because someone said, "What are you doing?" Don't stop because there is a party next door. You have to keep doing it. And if you can't do it now, don't just throw it away, put it away and keep working on it. Because, my ideas come from me when I'm on my bike or hiking. That's it. That distraction is important, but coming back is the process. Keep coming back.
Wise words. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And we will meet soon, hopefully.
Yeah.